Meanwhile, the late night hosts are beginning to recognize that it turns out that when you become just a platform for the Democratic Party, no one wants to listen to you anymore, which is why Greg Gutfeld on Fox News, a cable network, is now outdrawing the late night so-called comedy hosts on CBS and NBC and ABC. So Jimmy Kimmel was out there whining about the fact that his fan base is less interested in him since he started criticizing Trump. That's really not the issue. The issue is that you stopped criticizing Democrats and only criticized Trump. That your criticism of Democrats has been of the, man, I just wish they were a little more enthusiastic, but aren't they nice guys, brand? And a criticism of Trump is that he's Orange Hitler. That's boring and non-comedic. Jimmy Kimmel is no longer a comedian. As my friend Guy Benson says, he's the woke pope of late night. And no one's interested in that. Here's Jimmy Kimmel whining about his lack of audience.
Does ABC ever say to you, hey, could you not just attack this side and lay off a little bit because we're going to lose those people?
There was at one time, maybe, I don't know, like right around the beginning of this whole like Trump thing where...
This is now 8 years ago?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe not quite that long ago. That was like kind of hinted at, but I said, listen, I get it. I mean, I don't disagree. I mean, you're right. I have lost half of my family, maybe more than that. I mean, when 10 years ago, among like Republicans, I was the most popular talk show host.
Well, maybe that was because you were funny 10 years ago. Maybe that's because you used to be the kind of person who was friendly with Adam Carolla publicly, and not just like friendly, but you would actually acknowledge that Adam Carolla's perspective was decent and okay. And now you're the guy who goes out there and lectures everybody about healthcare. And this has been true. Really, the breaking point for Jimmy Kimmel is when he went on national TV and he was crying over the fact that his son had had a heart surgery. And he was suggesting that that was only possible because of Obamacare, which is not true. It is not true. And using your kid as the basis for national policy is generally bad stuff, particularly for comedic hosts. I have the right to say that because my daughter was operated on by the same exact surgeon as Jimmy Kimmel's son. Okay, and I never use that as a platform for free market healthcare is the solution. It's silly. But Jimmy Kimmel's been doing this routine for years, and it's not a shock that his ratings have been consistently in decline. The same thing, by the way, happened with Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon was the most nonpartisan of late night hosts. And then he decided in about 2020 that he was going to go completely off the rails, that he had to prove to everybody just how woke he was. And everybody said, you're not funny anymore. We're not going to watch you. Stephen Colbert has also tried to claim this mantle. So you have three people all competing for the same narrow slice of audience and cannibalizing one another. We'll get to more in just 1 second. First, sending data over an unencrypted internet connection is like sending a postcard. Your message is wide open for the mailman and any other nosy individual to see. Whenever you're connected to an unencrypted internet network on your phone, computer, tablet, or TV, you're sending countless pieces of information out into the digital world. They can be seen and intercepted by pretty much anyone. A VPN, or virtual private network, creates a secure tunnel between your device and the internet. Like putting your postcard in an envelope, so nobody can actually read the letter before it gets to the person you're sending it to. ExpressVPN is the VPN I trust myself to keep my data secure. ExpressVPN creates that secure encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet so hackers can't steal that personal data, passwords, financial details. Hackers make serious cash selling personal information on the dark web, but ExpressVPN makes it easier than ever to keep your information safe. ExpressVPN is super easy to use. All you do is you open up the app, and then once you have opened up the app, it shows you this, right? And here is the problem. Right now, it's not connected. So I hit the button, and behold, it is now connected, which means I'm protected. Plus, ExpressVPN works on all your devices and can stay secure on the go. Secure your online data today at expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show. Get 3 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show. expressvpn.com/Ben Shapiro Show. Remember, Jay Leno used to draw big ratings because he was reliably nonpartisan. Johnny Carson refused to say who he voted for, even though he was a Democrat. Stephen Colbert has become so unfunny that he's now just a propaganda outlet on behalf of the Democrats. So last week, for example, Stephen Colbert was quoting Michigan GOP gubernatorial nominee Tudor Dixon. And Tudor Dixon had claimed that there was a person who was complaining about sexually explicit books at the library. And Colbert said she made this person totally up, except that the guy exists. So here was Stephen Colbert claiming that Dixon made up a story about a voter. That is a lie, that the voter is a human.
Dixon's not the only one worried about this issue. So is this guy she totally made up.
I had a gentleman come up to me just a few nights ago, and he said, I found content in my school library describing how to have sex to my son. I went to the Democrats, and I said, I cannot believe that this is in there.
Okay. Fine. fine. That happened.
But the man does exist, and Dixon's story was, in fact, real.
Along with two parents, concerned parents who stood up and speak freely against these sexually explicit books and titles. I'm a father of 5 kids, and I've been living with the one for the last 19 years. Thank you for being a mother. I am along with hundreds, maybe thousands of people in Durban who are ready for the red tsunami to come back.
Okay, that guy's name is Khalil Othman. He's a real human. He also is a person of minority background. So imagine if there was a right-wing host who denied that there was a story that was told by a Democratic candidate. The person wasn't real, so it was said the person wasn't real. And a person was real and it turned out was a minority person. That would be like a national story about bad media coverage and how terrible, how could people even question this sort of stuff. Stephen Colbert does it, and it's like barely a headline, like a little bit of a headline, maybe like a little tiny bit. He's a Muslim American, by the way. This is one of the great ironies of this particular election cycle, is the Democrats are now, because they've shifted so far to the left socially, in the business of yelling at Muslims. Because it turns out that many Muslims are not socially left-wing. Many Muslims actually, up until about 2001, right after September 11th, the Muslim vote was actually moving pretty heavily in the Republican direction. That's going to happen again. It turns out that Muslims in the United States are much more moderate in terms of foreign policy and in terms of sort of radical belief systems than Muslims in other countries. And it turns out they're still socially conservative. So when the Democratic Party makes itself the party of atheistic radical gender ideology, it's going to have some costs with Hispanics, with blacks, with Muslims, with a lot of groups out there that right now the Democratic Party is just taking for granted. But on a broader level, the lack of comedy in the comedy world is killing itself, and now they're whining about it. This is why there's an entire article the other day in the New York Times about, oh my God, Trevor Noah is going away and being replaced by Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan. Well, I mean, on a purely objective level, I have a feeling that people like this show and don't like Trevor Noah because Trevor Noah stopped fulfilling the promise that he made to his audience, which was to be funny first. Funny first was the promise. See, on my show, politics first is the promise. And there will be some funny along the way, but it's going to be political and there's going to be some serious stuff. The ratio of funny to serious on the show, serious is like, I don't know, 80% and 20% is funny. Rogan, on his show, it's kind of the same. He has actual comedy specials, which are supposed to be funny. And then he's got a show, and his show is mostly serious. The problem is all of these comedians promised one thing, and they delivered their audience another. And then when the audience is disappointed, they're like, why isn't the audience more tolerant of my shift into Edward R. Murrow land? Because you didn't pitch yourself that way. You're not qualified for that. Jimmy Kimmel is a dude who used to bounce on trampolines with ladies with big boobs. Let's stop pretending that Jimmy Kimmel is some sort of great scion from on high, bequeathing us levels of political knowledge heretofore unseen in American politics. Like Stephen Colbert was a correspondent for Jon Stewart making dumb jokes while wearing a raincoat. This is like what these people were. He made his living just making fun of Bill O'Reilly for 5 years. And the notion that these people are serious political commentators and should be both respected as such, but also we shouldn't call on them to actually just move into that lane. They're actually comedians. Why aren't you laughing? Why aren't you laughing? We have to redefine comedy in order to make room for the fact that the entire comedic left has lost the comedy. When you can't laugh at your own people, when you can't laugh at both sides, you're not a comedian. You're a partisan hack. And that's what these folks have become. Alrighty, guys, the rest of the show is continuing right now. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll be getting into Jimmy Kimmel lamenting that many members of his audience think he's not funny anymore. It's very sad. If you're not a member, click the link in the description and join us.